Alright guys, welcome back to Mill RC and welcome to part 2 on the SIG 4-star. Today we will be putting together the fuselage, so let's get to it. Before we get into the fuselage though, I do want to show the wings. I've done some things to them, so let's check them out. So I have installed my servos here, my 2 ailerons. I don't know if I mentioned it in part 1, but I am going dual aileron servos. And the way I've mounted them is I've used this neat little servo cover design. I've seen these in a lot of ARFs and I really like the idea, so I decided to implement it in my build. So the cover is made out of 1/8 inch ply, and the cover just screws onto these hardwood blocks. So I've just got them glued onto the wing ribs. That's how simple it is. And then it's just a slot and more blocks for the servo to screw onto. So that's really how simple it is. So that's my source of aileron control. Second thing is I've added these really neat looking balsa wingtips. There's one on the other one too. Looks really good. So with my extra sheeting that I bought to sheet this, I also from the same place ordered some 2x2x12 balsa blocks, and after a boatload of sanding and carving, trust me, it was a lot. So much though I think I became slightly insane. Just kidding. Anyway, I'm glad that I did it though. I think it looks really good and all, and it, yeah, looks sweet. If you want more details for my process on doing these 2 wingtips, I'll leave a link in my description. There's a video that you can check it out if you want more detail on them. Other than that, the leading edge is sanded in. It's no longer a triangle stock right there. And the trailing edge stock is flush and angled correctly with the rear sheeting right here. I don't know if it'll be able to focus, but it's all sanded and ready to go. So that's the wings are ready for final sanding and covering. So with that being said, as you can see, I got my fuselage parts laid out here. Let's go ahead and start putting the fuse together. All right, so the first step in building the fuselage is we've got to actually get some sub-assemblies, I guess you want to call them, started or put together, whatever. So first thing is we're going to want to take our landing gear and get this landing gear block in the kit and just line it up and drill holes for the blind nuts. I'm not sure if I'm going to do 3 blind nuts. I really don't see the necessity of 3. 2 I think is plenty, but I don't know. We'll just see what happens. Another thing I'm doing is I kind of went away from the kit, and I'm going to use these nylon bolts for the landing gear. I think this is a better way to do it, because if we have our landing, the landing gear will just bust off, and it will prevent us from having to epoxy a whole bunch of stuff together. So there are the blind nuts there, which this is all 6/32 hardware. Then the next assembly they want us to put together is the firewall here, 2 F1 formers. They want us to glue these together, and then they want to go ahead and mount our power system on. So I guess now is a good time to announce what kind of power setup we're going with. And we are going with this beautiful Sato FA56. Yeah, love this engine. I think it's by far one of my most favorite Satos ever as far as looks, and they just make great power and they sound great. Definitely one of my favorite Satos ever. I think this will be great power for this plane. So yep, once we go ahead and get this glued together, we'll go ahead and put the engine mounts right there, screw them on, transfer the centerline marks, and we'll screw on this bad boy. And well, we won't keep it on, but we'll get the bolt holes ready and lined up. So let's go ahead and get to it. Alright, well I finished the sub-assemblies, and the motor mount definitely took the most amount of time, just because you have to really make sure it's all lined up. You gotta measure twice and all that stuff, so did the most time, but it's worth it at the end. Like I said, I am using different hardware. I am using a little bit longer bolts than stock, because I like to use lock nuts on the back of my firewalls. I think it's a little bit more reliable and Loctite, because I will say these thread in very easily. The hardware is very good quality, and which is great, but you know, easy thread, and you may want to be cautious about that. But like I said, that's just me. Landing gear block, once again, I'm going with 2. I don't see the benefit of 3. If I have to, I'll put the third one in later, or just wood screw in, whatever I have to do to, if it's not strong enough, but whatever. Only other thing is I got the F2 former drilled out. There's a little dimple there, and you just drill it out with a 1/4-inch drill bit, and it's for the wing dowel, so really simple about that. If you're wondering about these clamps, I got these at Hobby Lobby, and they are awesome for builds like this. I use them even not in kit building, but they are really handy for a lot of stuff. So I highly recommend them, and they work really great. So, very cool. Anyway, let's get on to the fuse. fused together, all framed up and glued, and I think it came out great. So once you get your fuselage doublers in place right here, you go ahead and pretty much just rubber band it together and slide all your formers in place and make sure they sit all nice and flush and where they're supposed to be, all the way seated, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. And then you line it up on this plan, make sure she's straight, and then start tack gluing. And every tack glue, probably you want to check the alignment, make sure it hasn't moved, and then once there's enough glue to hold it, you can just go ahead and glue the whole thing and it'll work out for you. So came out nice and straight, and I'm happy with it, so good to go there. Next steps are putting this headrest bulkhead in the slot here, angling it correctly, and then putting the stringers in back here, and then adding the balsa fuselage top deck, and then just finishing off the bottom front here, and then it's pretty much ready. Or that's pretty much the basic fuselage assembly, so really easy to do and should be fun. So one thing I'm going to mention here is I did not knock out these rear, the push rod exits, or this lightning hole, and there's a good reason for it. So I am using a Sato FA56, which is a heavier engine than the highest recommended 4-stroke engine recommended in this kit, and I am planning on doing some stuff up here in the nose that's not stock, of course, all adding weight. And there have been reports of using heavier 4-stroke engines that this plane is slightly nose heavy. So I left those in there just in case, to counteract that nose heaviness. If I have to put my rear servos back here, if it'll help the CG out, I think I'll do it. I kind of prefer that setup anyway. I think a shorter push rod is a better source of control, and that's why those are left in here. So if I have to glue those back in so I can mount my servos back here, that's what we're going to do. But yeah, came out great, and we're going to go ahead and move on. So back to time lapse. Fuselage headrest bulkhead and the stringers in place, and it all came out great and looks very good. I'm very satisfied with that. The reason I stopped the time lapse is because I forgot to mention that I never installed this instrument panel piece, and that's going to have to be on to install this top sheeting, and this stuff is unfortunately really hard to bend over, so we're probably going to have to bend over. It's really hard to get the curve for it to, you know, get the contour of the former, so we'll probably have to use some water, spray it or mist it on there and see if we can get it to bend anymore. And then we're also going to be beveling the fuselage here just to get it to fit better. But all that being said, let's continue on. got the top sheeting on, and it was actually quite a bit simpler than I thought it was going to be. The water really works good for bending this harder to bend sheeting, and you just missed it, and it really softens it up so you can bend it. So there's a lot of, this piece is intentionally left bigger, I can tell, for a reason. I mean, there's a lot of overhang here, but that's all fine and dandy. We will all make it all nice, look good when we do the sanding. So yeah, it came out great. The other thing I did is I took this tri-stock that's included in the kit, and I mean the instructions do say to do this, but I went ahead and added some tri-stock on my firewall right here. And you see I cut out the tri-stock for the blind nuts and my block nuts that I'm going to use, and it works great. So that's good. And then in the meantime, while I was doing the tri-stock, I also added a piece right in there, as you can see. Pretty much every form you read about this thing say that they recommend you put a piece of tri-stock right there, because this is a known weak spot, and I can definitely see why they say that, because it's just glued on here. And you know, when this thing's in flight forces and landing, especially hard landings, there's going to be a lot of force on just two little glue joints right there. So definitely recommend adding tri-stock there in the rear. It will definitely make the airframe less prone to snapping or breaking right there, or I say fuselage. So pretty much the last steps are installing the landing gear plate and this fuselage front bottom, I guess is what they call it. I think it actually goes on this way. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. There is another piece called a tank floor, and that's this right here. However, I'm gonna wait to install this because I'm not too sure on my fuel tank position yet. Like I said, I'm using a heavier engine, and I'm thinking about putting in place my electronics back there. So maybe having the fuel tank here may not be the best way to go. So I'm gonna hold off on, I actually may hold off on installing this too, because if my fuel tank has to go there, then it's gonna be a lot harder to put it in after I install this front bottom here or whatever. So we may put the landing gear block in, which we'll do that, and then that might be it for the fuselage video as far as the build goes, because I mean that's pretty much finished, and then we're ready to move on to my modifications that I'm going to do to this fuse, and then just the tail surfaces, and shoot, plane's going to be pretty much built up by then. So anyway, it came along well. So yeah, let's get the landing gear mount in, then we'll go ahead and wrap up this video. Okay, got the landing gear block glued in, and it came out really nice. As you saw on the time lapse, I did add some more tri-stock there. Now the tri-stock does not end up flush with the formers of where this block sits. I had to trim them down a little bit because of the blind nuts, but once I did that, I was able to get the landing gear mount to sit on the wood, and yeah, I was able to glue it to the tri-stock to the mount, no problem. So definitely add some strength, and I think it's going to be worth it there. So I did add some tri-stock there. So yeah, definitely enjoying the build on this. I thought it was going to be kind of dull, and I was going to want to rush this thing to get done, but I'm actually enjoying the build process by quite a bit. You know, there's a saying out there that you're not a true modeler without building a kit like this, and I'm not saying I'm agreeing with that statement, but I will definitely say that you are a better modeler if you build something like this. Take the time to build a nice old-fashioned balsa wood kit. The experience you gain is just invaluable, and I definitely recommend it to someone who's willing to give it a shot. So anyway, that'll conclude part 2 with the fuselage. Part 3 is we're going to actually be going back to the fuselage, but we're going to be doing my modifications to it, because just like the wings, few things I think that'll improve the look of this plane, and we're going to attempt them in part 3. So yeah, if you guys like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button, and if you have any comments or questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. So thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for part 3.